My name is Bill Park. I work for the Defence Studies Department of King's College, London University. Um, for most of my academic career, I've been primarily interested in issues of European security. But at the end of the Cold War, I started to find that boring, and I moved into Turkish foreign policy, which I'd always had an interest in, but never really specialized in. And one thing I would say about studying Turkey, which I now do almost exclusively in my research, is it's never boring. I first met the Dialogue Society when they invited me to a very large conference that they organised in London in October 2007. And the conference was on basically the role of Islam in the modern world, in a changing world. They had speakers from not only UK, but internationally, Turkey obviously, but France, Germany, the United States, and so on. And that was really my first meeting with members of the Dialogue Society, and indeed my first real insight into who they are and what they do. My impressions, both of that conference and other activities that I've been invited to, is that they are, first of all, very efficient. The London conference I thought was one of the best organised conferences that I've ever been to, and I go to lots of conferences. But I also thought that they were very open in the sense that they invited people with different values, different interests, different walks of life, different countries, and seemed to find a way of embracing this range of perceptions and approaches into their own activities. So I think those two things, their efficiency and their openness, are what I would single out about the Dialogue Society and the way they conduct their business. As I said, I attended the big conference in London in October 2007, but they also kindly invited me to an academic retreat in Istanbul in July 2008. I had a number of impressions, perhaps too many to share in a short interview. Again, I would stress the efficiency of everything and the openness in the way that they approach their business. But also, I was very impressed by the way in which, although I didn't feel they engineered it, somehow the values and the purposes of the Dialogue Society shone through in what they did. That was particularly the case with the academic retreat in Istanbul, where we were introduced to all sorts of different organizations and movements that the Dialogue Society is related to. And if I take that whole experience as a package, we had quite a good insight into the sort of ways of thinking of people in the Dialogue Society and those that they associate with in Turkey. So my impressions really were, I would say, almost entirely positive. There's an anecdote that I'm mildly ashamed of, or not so much ashamed, embarrassed by. It was when we were in Istanbul, and we had been hosted by a family who had invited us to attend a barbecue in their garden. Excuse me, and the family was an extended family. I think, if I remember correctly, there were two fathers, if you like, and all of their children, and all of their children. So you had at least 3 or maybe 4 generations living in 2 houses. And the barbecue was between the 2 houses. And I was very impressed by the values, the sort of morality, if you like, that came across from this family and from this experience. Now, I'm a political scientist, and I pride myself on always being skeptical, even being cynical. But I was quite moved by this experience, and in particular because I go to Turkey quite a lot. The people that I met gave me an insight into a different kind of Turkey. Normally I meet only officials, academics, journalists in Istanbul and Ankara, and this was a different class of people with different values and different ways of living. And I found that experience quite moving. We were asked to offer our comments at the end of the barbecue, and I said something like what I just said, but perhaps in more emotional terms. And for me, this remains an embarrassing experience, but nevertheless one that I felt at the time and still feel to this day. I think that what the Dialogue Society is doing is especially valuable in two respects. First of all, uh, after 9/11, there is a need to establish dialogue between the Islamic and other communities, and that is one thing the Dialogue Society do. And secondly, as European, indeed many societies, now have large immigrant communities, I think the Dialogue Society is also addressing itself to intercommunal relationships within societies. And I think those two things are absolutely crucial in the world in which we live, and Dialogue Society address themselves to both of those. Perhaps it would be interesting for other people, particularly people that don't know much about Dialogue Society, to hear me say that I'm actually a militant atheist. I don't believe in any religion. And by and large, I steer quite clear of religious organizations. And I suppose if I try to explain why I steer clear of religious organizations is because I always suspect that I'm going to be preached at with values that I don't like. I've had a lot of contact with the Dialogue Society, and at no point have I ever felt preached at. I know what they stand for, and indeed I've discussed their values and mission with a number of individuals that are associated with them. But I found those discussions to be very open and, if you like, from my point of view, not at all threatening or challenging or annoying. So that's something I think that for me has been quite an experience, that I have freely and openly and positively engaged with an organization that is obviously has religion as part of its core value system. And I, as an atheist, have found that to be not a problem at all at any time. And I think that's perhaps the most positive thing that I could say about them and my experience with them.